Somewhere along the Mississippi, in a parish erased from every official record, 17 men died under circumstances so grotesque that all documentation was burned in 1847. Each man, witnesses said, clutched a piece of indigo cloth, their eyes wide, and voices whispering the same name. She was known only as the most desired woman in the Delta, yet no bill of sale or ledger exists for her. Over decades, her story survived only in fragments, smuggled diary entries, coded letters, and court testimonies sealed until the mid-20th century. This was no ordinary woman, no simple victim of circumstance. What unfolded on that plantation was a deliberate orchestration of obsession, a weaponization of desire so precise that it left men undone. The air itself carried her presence, a stillness, a calculated patience, a knowledge of every weakness she would encounter. These deaths were not accidents. Every whisper, every longing glance, every hand extended in pursuit of her was a thread in a dark tapestry she had woven long before anyone knew her name. Desire, in her hands, became a tool of annihilation, a mirror reflecting the corruption and fragility of the men who thought themselves masters. And so begins the tale they tried to erase. The Mississippi Delta in 1839 was a land of contradictions, where wealth and decay walked hand in hand. Columned mansions rose like sentinels from swamplands, white paint gleaming against the twisted cypress draped in moss, while the labor that built them bent human bodies into the mud and cane. Sugar and cotton generated fortunes measured in hundreds of thousands, yet the price was the subjugation of countless souls. Among these plantations, a silent, invisible competition thrived, one not in crop yields or grandeur alone, but in the possession of certain women, prized not for skill or strength, but for their beauty, their intelligence, their power to provoke desire. It was in this shadowed marketplace that she arrived, brought from Charleston by Lysander Thibault, a broker known for securing the rarest property for the wealthiest men. She was 26, older than most women in the trade, and her presence radiated a quiet authority that unsettled even hardened overseers. Her skin burnished copper, her eyes unnerving in their clarity, her bearing impossible to ignore. In Thibault's journal, he wrote of a stillness, a deliberate calculation in her movements. He could not articulate the unease she stirred. This woman was not merely a commodity, she was a storm contained in human form, a force designed to test the very limits of male desire and obsession. Before the auction, she vanished. The locked room, the barred window, the guards, nothing could explain it. When Thibault entered that morning, she had disappeared, leaving only a torn sliver of indigo cloth and the faint scent of oleander, sweet yet poisonous. Panic swept through the parish. Slave patrols scoured the swamps, the river, the roads, while rewards multiplied. Yet she was nowhere to be found. Then, in broad daylight, she appeared at Sebastian Duval's plantation, walking the oak-lined drive as if strolling through a garden, choosing him of her own volition. Duval, a man of vast wealth and ruthless acumen, had competed for her at the auction. She told him simply, "I chose you." Those words carried a weight the men around her could not comprehend. To submit or resist was no longer her question. The power dynamic had inverted. Duval paid twice the asking price without hesitation, enthralled, blind to the danger. She was placed not in the quarters but in a cottage, formerly occupied by a lady's maid, dressed in fine clothes, attended by servants, walking alongside him in the gardens. Every man who witnessed her presence understood this was no ordinary woman, no ordinary desire. Every glance she offered was a lesson in control, every movement a trap for the minds of those who thought themselves untouchable. She studied them all, each man in the parish who wielded power, who considered himself untouchable. She memorized patterns, secrets, debts, hidden correspondences, weaknesses that could unravel the strongest egos. Within months, she became the axis around which their obsessions spun. Letters arrived offering fortunes, flattery, desperate pleas, each more revealing than the last. Armand Lair, Octave Rousseau, Tyle Budreau, Philippe Sonia. They competed to possess her, and in doing so, exposed the fragility of their wealth, their marriages, their reputations. Duval, intoxicated with the illusion of control, failed to recognize the growing storm. Their letters, preserved in private estates, were almost maniacal, descending into obsession, each one a step toward ruin. Her presence alone corrupted alliances, shattered friendships, undermined the social fabric that had sustained the parish for generations. Men of law, men of commerce, men of power, none could resist. The plantation, once a simple theater of wealth and domination, became a stage for psychological warfare they did not understand. Desire, once a simple longing, transformed into a weapon, precise and merciless. She did not have to act. Her stillness, her intelligence, her uncanny timing was enough to orchestrate chaos. In every word, every glance, every gesture, she reshaped the rules, and the men who thought themselves hunters realized, far too late, that they had become the prey. The first death came quietly, almost imperceptibly. Sébastien Duval, the man she had chosen, was found at his desk, hand clutching a pen, a half-written letter trailing into silence. His eyes were wide open, staring at something unseen. A piece of indigo cloth rested neatly in his other hand, folded as if left deliberately, a signature of her presence. No wounds, no poison, no conventional cause. The doctor could not explain it. Fear spread silently, creeping into every corner of the parish. Men whispered in private rooms. Wives feared the evenings, overseers hesitated in the fields. The pattern, the inevitability, began to dawn on those who dared to observe closely. Death followed desire, yet it was not random. Each previous owner she had touched met ruin, madness, or disappearance. Charleston, Savannah, Virginia, all left behind traces of obsession turned fatal. Now, Duval had joined the list. The parish tried to suppress it, to cover it with reason and law, but those who understood knew that something ancient and deliberate had been set in motion. Her influence was invisible yet absolute, a predator cloaked in elegance, manipulating the strongest men into unraveling themselves. She had entered their world not to survive, but to dominate, to expose the fragility and corruption that lay beneath their wealth, their titles, their illusions of mastery. The most desired woman in Louisiana had become the architect of ruin. The other men did not heed the warning. Armandler organized patrols, promising rewards funded by secret land sales. Octave Rousseau hired a tracker famed across state lines for his ability to recover the most cunning runaways. Tayol Budrow rode endlessly through swamps, questioning every soul, manic in pursuit. Sonia, the judge, thought himself clever, convinced he could conquer what others had failed to possess. Each man believed he was immune, that his intellect, wealth, and law could bend her to his will, but her pattern was clear. Every return, every reappearance was a choice, a demonstration that she controlled the rhythm of their lives. She allowed herself to be seen, studied, admired, but never possessed. In the cold of December, she reappeared along the river road, walking with deliberate grace, unhurried, allowing the patrol to deliver her to Sonia. Candlelight flickered in the windows until dawn, laughter spilling through the air, low and knowing. The men could not comprehend her amusement. She had already mapped every weakness, every desire, every secret ambition. Their obsession had made them predictable. They could no longer act without revealing themselves. She was a master of human desire, and they were her instruments, puppets dancing unknowingly to a rhythm only she dictated. Each step she took deepened the descent, drawing the parish into a nightmare they could neither name nor escape. The letters intensified, each one a confession, each one a surrender. Offers for her grew increasingly extravagant. Money, land, horses, favors beyond imagination. Yet Duval's taunting refusals escalated the frenzy, his words almost cruel, detailing her intelligence, her charm, her unassailable presence. Friendships fractured, alliances dissolved, trust evaporated. The parish itself seemed to pulse with anxiety, the air thick with unspoken dread. Men who had once measured power in acres and titles now measured it in her proximity, in her attention, in her favor. Celeste, always composed, always observing, never acted directly. Her power lay in anticipation, in the knowledge that desire, when properly understood, was the most potent weapon a woman could wield, and they were all students, unwilling to admit the lesson they were being taught. Rumors twisted into hysteria. Wives reported husbands speaking to shadows, absent even while present. Business partnerships faltered. The very structure of society bent under her invisible hand. One by one, she reduced the strongest men to obsession, turning ambition against itself. The pursuit of her had become a private war, a silent struggle for survival. Each man's mind became a battlefield, every decision poisoned by fascination. She had no legal claim, no overt force, yet her control was absolute. Desire had become a weapon, and she wielded it with deadly precision. Night fell across St. Landry Parish, thick and suffocating, yet her presence remained luminous, almost ethereal. She moved like a shadow that men could see but never touch, the scent of oleander trailing behind her, sweet and poisonous. Every man who had attempted to dominate or possess her now measured his days by the uncertainty of her appearances. Fear mingled with obsession, creating a toxic haze that clouded reason. Sonia, the judge whose authority had once been unquestioned, spent nights combing records, searching for traces of her past. What he discovered should have terrified him. Patterns of ruin in every location she had touched. Histories of obsession turned to death or madness. Yet he convinced himself that he was different, that control was within his grasp. He repeated her name in private, almost a mantra, as if by uttering it he could summon or command her. She knew this, and each observation, each study of the men, became a meticulous layering of psychological dominance. By midwinter, the parish was unrecognizable. Relationships, commerce, law, even the simplest social exchanges had been contaminated by her presence. She required no violence. No declarations. The world bent to her strategy, and those who thought themselves hunters had become her prey. Every choice they made, every movement, every thought carried her invisible mark. Then, in early January, she vanished again. The cottages emptied, beds made, possessions gone. Only the scent remained, and the folded indigo cloth left on a pillow, precise as a signature. Panic and fascination interwove, creating a new rhythm of dread. Men abandoned reason for pursuit, trust for suspicion. Private search parties scoured the swamps, the rivers, the roads, but none could predict her movements. Every return, every disappearance reinforced the lesson they refused to learn. She chose the timing, the place, and the consequence. By now, the obsession had metastasized. D'Armandler, Rousseau, Modreau, and Sonia spent entire days consumed by speculation, calculating, plotting, bargaining, in vain. Their ambition blinded them, obscured the obvious. She was orchestrating everything. The parish itself seemed complicit, the foggy nights thickening into metaphor, the rivers carrying secrets, the moss-draped trees witnessing the slow erosion of male pride. Celeste was not a woman to be conquered. She was a mirror, reflecting desire, weakness, and corruption. And men were incapable of stepping away, incapable of observing without interference. By understanding them, she understood power itself. Its vulnerabilities, its follies, its illusions, desire, fascination, greed, obsession, they were levers in her hands, and she pulled them all with quiet precision. The men were not enemies, they were instruments, her masterpiece unfolding, and the parish trembled beneath the weight of invisible dominion. In February, letters arrived again, more desperate, more revealing. Offers no man should have made, promises that stripped them bare. Each contained confessions of envy, greed, shame, longing. Each man unknowingly disclosed strategies, debts, alliances, secrets he would have killed to protect. Celeste read them all, memorized, considered, calculated. Every refusal from Duval, each subtle taunt, each acknowledgement of her intellect sharpened the frenzy. The social order faltered. Men who had once dictated terms now obeyed obsession. The plantation system, a theater of domination and hierarchy, had inverted itself. Wealth, title, law, nothing mattered but her presence, her choices, her attention. And then came the laughter. Low knowing and carried across the chill of the river air. It signaled not just amusement but awareness mastery. They could not see her intent, but they could feel it, visceral, like the chill before a storm. Every day they pursued her. Every thought revolved around her. Every plan dissolved under her invisible hand. The men of power had become children before her intellect, her strategy, her control. She was no longer a commodity. She was the axis of a moral and social collapse. Desire was her weapon, obsession her battlefield, and every man she touched fell willingly into the trap they could neither name nor resist. She returned in March, walking the main road in daylight, indifferent to every pair of eyes that followed. Men scrambled, searching for control, yet she moved like time itself had slowed to her will. Sonia met her at his plantation, offering food, candles, books, attempts at diplomacy, at understanding, at containment. She laughed, low and knowing, her voice a weapon as precise as any blade. Her gaze dissected him, measured him, revealed the vulnerabilities he had spent a lifetime hiding. Every smile, every pause, every glance was calculated, turning fear into fascination. By now, the pattern was undeniable. She thrived on control, on observation, on mastery over those who thought themselves untouchable. Each man who pursued her revealed more than strategy. They revealed their essence, their weaknesses, their desires, their fatal flaws. By exploiting these invisible cracks, she orchestrated chaos without lifting a hand. Houses whispered with tension, friendships decayed, marriages strained, businesses faltered. Desire had become contagion, and she was its origin. Every step, every movement, every breath was a lesson in domination. She existed above the laws of men, above society, a force both human and transcendent. To follow her was to risk ruin. To ignore her was to risk irrelevance. She had claimed them all, not through violence, but through insight, intelligence, and the terrifying simplicity of absolute control. By now, obsession had taken root in every corner of the parish. Men who once wielded absolute authority were shadows of themselves, distracted, vulnerable, desperate. Letters flew like missiles, bribes escalated, confidences spilled, each man unwittingly weaponizing his own desire. Celeste observed, silent, composed, a conductor orchestrating a symphony of obsession. In the flickering candlelight of Sonia's plantation, she walked through rooms as if she owned the very air, though legally she owned nothing. Every conversation, every reaction, every heartbeat became part of her study. She knew patterns, histories, fears, secrets. The men who thought themselves predators had become prey, dancing to rhythms only she dictated. Her returns were unpredictable, her departures precise, leaving only oleander-scented traces and the folded indigo cloth, a mark of her presence. By midwinter, the parish itself had shifted. The social order corrupted, the hierarchy fractured, the men's minds unraveling under invisible pressure. She demanded nothing overt, yet she exacted everything. Desire, obsession, fear, they were weapons in her arsenal. Each man in pursuing her became complicit in his own undoing. The world had inverted. Those who ruled now served. Those who controlled were controlled. And the woman who carried nothing but her intelligence, her will, and her quiet patience had become the axis of a moral, social, and psychological collapse that no law, no wealth, no influence could reverse. By April, death and ruin had touched nearly every man who dared to follow her. Duval's demise was the first, yet not the last. Others met sudden sickness, inexplicable accidents, duels over trivialities, miscalculations that shattered estates and fortunes. Celeste did not act directly. Her hand was invisible, her strategy subtle, her power psychological. She observed the unfolding chaos as a chess master watches the board, guiding pieces into positions of their own destruction. Letters continued to arrive, desperate, pleading, obsessive, revealing desires, confessions, vulnerabilities. She memorized them all, storing every weakness for future application. The parish became a stage of fear and fascination. Men hid in libraries, consulted lawyers, rode endlessly through swamps, yet none could anticipate her movements. Her presence warped reality, turning desire into poison, obsession into a weapon. The air carried her influence like a storm moving unseen, and all who inhaled it were marked. Each man's own ego, ambition, and lust became the instrument of his undoing. Society itself trembled under her quiet dominion. By understanding desire, by observing obsession, she achieved something no law, no army, no man could: absolute control without overt force. Those who underestimated her vanished from history quietly, leaving only fragments for those brave enough to notice the pattern. She existed as both myth and reality, a force no man could survive. Now halfway through, it is time to seal identity. If you understand what you are witnessing, if you feel the shift in perspective, I want you to write in the comments, "Indigo binds," then repeat it again. Indigo binds. Say it twice, because this is no ordinary affirmation. It is a ritual acknowledgement that you are seeing what the men of Louisiana could not: the invisible power, the weaponization of desire, the unseen architecture of control. Only by recognizing this pattern, only by engaging deliberately, do you begin to internalize the truth. Men who fail to acknowledge the system remain prey. Those who understand it gain insight into every hierarchy, every manipulation, every hidden agenda that governs human behavior. Desire, obsession, greed, and power are not accidents. They are levers, and Celeste demonstrates mastery few humans ever achieve. Commenting this phrase is not superstition. It is a mental alignment, a conscious choice to see hidden truths, to recognize the mechanisms that shape men's minds and societies. Write it twice. Let it mark you as someone who has glimpsed forbidden knowledge. This is not just a story. It is a lesson, a map, a warning, and a mirror. By summer, the parish had descended into instability. The remaining men were fractured, paranoid, distrustful, consumed by thoughts of her. Business deals collapsed, alliances dissolved, old friendships crumbled. Every action was colored by fear, by longing, by obsession. Celeste's interventions were precise, her influence invisible, her control absolute. She had taught them all that power is not in wealth, not in titles, not in law, but in the ability to read, predict, and manipulate the desires and fears of others. Every man she encountered had unwittingly contributed to his own ruin, and the parish bore the marks of her strategy, silent, pervasive, unstoppable. By the time she moved again, all who sought to dominate her were hollowed out, mere vessels of desire turned inward, unable to act without revealing themselves. She walked freely through the world they had constructed, yet had dismantled, leaving only the consequences of obsession in her wake. Her intelligence was invisible, her patience infinite, her cruelty precise but unspoken. To survive her was impossible. To understand her was dangerous. To underestimate her was fatal. And through it all, the indigo cloth remained the only tangible trace, a signature of her presence, a silent testament to the destruction she left behind. Her legend spread, whispered between plantations, passed through servants and overseers, carefully erased from official records. Those who remembered her did so in fragments, a piece of indigo cloth, a faint scent of oleander, a smile that unsettled even the strongest men. Each detail carried the weight of unspoken truth. Desire, when understood and weaponized, could annihilate wealth, reputation, sanity. Celeste's mastery of this principle had transformed her from property into predator, from observed into architect. By controlling the expectations, obsessions, and fears of those who thought themselves masters, she demonstrated an intelligence and ruthlessness that transcended social norms. The men of the parish, the most powerful figures in their world, had been puppets in a game they could not comprehend, undone not by physical force, but by insight, patience, and strategy. Her story is preserved in fragments because the full truth was too dangerous to record. Those who encounter it today must understand, power is invisible, control is psychological, obsession is lethal, desire, when manipulated, becomes an instrument of absolute authority. And a single disciplined mind can orchestrate the collapse of entire hierarchies without touching a single life directly. Celeste's story is a lesson for anyone who thinks mastery is inherited, bought, or enforced. Finally, the truth of her method is terrifying in its simplicity. Men destroyed themselves. One by one, the wealthy, powerful, respected men of St. Landry Parish fell into ruin, madness, or death, leaving only Celeste untouched, free, and unbound. She had no army, no weapon, no legal claim. Yet her mastery of observation, prediction, and psychological manipulation gave her authority greater than any plantation owner could command. Her beauty, her intelligence, her patience, tools wielded with deliberate precision, exposed the fragility of power built on human greed and desire. History attempted to erase her, but the echoes remain. Indigo cloth, oleander scent, fragments of letters, diary entries, coded correspondences. They are not merely remnants, they are evidence of a woman who understood the deepest mechanics of human obsession and used them to orchestrate chaos. This is not myth, it is forbidden history, a demonstration of how a single mind can overturn entire social systems. For those who see it, the lesson is immutable, power is psychological, desire is deadly, and knowledge, carefully applied, is more lethal than any sword. Celeste endured, observed, and mastered what men never could. Her legacy is not recorded in victories or monuments, but in the ruin she left behind, and the truths that survive only for those bold enough to witness them.